All right guys, welcome back to the garage. It's finally time to get to work on my SRT4 swapped Dakota. Now if you're new here, this is my 95 Dakota. It originally came with the Chrysler 2.5 4-cylinder and AX15 transmission, which is going to take some work to bolt to the 2.4. So the goal for today's video is to get the transmission fully bolted to the 2.4 and in the truck so we can start to make mounts. Now the bolt pattern is close to bolting to the 2.4. This bell housing came from 93 to 95 in the Chrysler 2.5 4-cylinder trucks. Late 95 they switched to the AMC 2.5, so the bell housing will not work from those trucks. So what we got is these two and this one match the block, but you see this ear does not match this hole. So you definitely want to have all 4 bolts to the engine, and I think I came up with a plan for this. But first thing I had to do was to get to fully seat on the engine was I actually had to trim the input shaft, and all I did was trim the chamfer off. So where this edge would have went down, I just trimmed that off. So maybe 1/8 of an inch. The problem was it was bottoming out in the crank. I could teeter-totter the transmission like this and could not get it to seat fully against the block. But now that I just trimmed that very small amount off the tip of the input shaft, it fits right in there. Second thing is the input shaft bearing. This is from a Wrangler or Liberty 2.4 Jeep, and has a right pilot tip diameter, which is 3/4 inch for the input shaft right here, and it fits right in there. Front wheel drive engines did not have a pilot bearing in here, so it's something you have to source. From what I've seen, Crown Automotive is the only one who makes these with this outer sleeve still, so I'll put that part number down in the description. That input shaft bearing should also work on the AR5. So if you're one of the lucky ones who have sourced the Liberty or Wrangler 2.4 bell housing, that matches perfect to obviously the 2.4, and you're planning on using an AR5 or something, I believe the AR5 has a 3/4 inch input shaft tip diameter, so that pilot bearing should work. But the AX15, the R154, the MA5, AR5 transmissions all share the same bell housing to transmission bolt pattern. So this bell housing and the 2.4 Jeep bell housing will bolt to the AR5, AX15, R154. So you have some options. And of course there is a billet adapter plate to run a T56 on a 2.4. It's a really nice kit. It's just a lot of money. I purposely bought a 93-95 4-cylinder manual truck so that I could use the transmission. But the first thing I want to do is make these plates work with the AX15 on the 2.4, which pretty much do, except for the one bolt hole that's mismatched. So I think my plan is to bolt all 3 of these to the bell housing. Then I'll know where to make my hole on the Dakota plates. That way the plates will work. Okay, I'm gonna throw this bottom one on. All right, then the top Dakota one should sit like that. And then the 2.4 can also sit on this dowel over here. Like that. And there we go. That's pretty much matched up. So what we need to do is notch this for that bolt hole. Now you can see this is where the hole needs to be in the plate, and you can see I have a mark here where I'm going to notch the transmission, and that's because this is what I came up with to bridge this bolt hole to this bolt hole. And basically what this is going to do is sit on this ear like that, and it'll bolt to the engine, and then this side will bolt to the transmission like that, essentially linking this hole in the bell housing to this hole on the engine. This is just a chunk of a brake caliper, believe it or not. Then I grind it on and weld it on and drilled some holes. So this is where you're gonna have to get creative to make this match that. The problem is the head of the bolt for this mount will be on this side, so obviously the case is going to be in the way. I'm just going to notch that out so that there's room for a bolt head to be right there, and we should be good. So next up, I'm going to drill the hole there, notch the transmission, and we should be able to finally bolt this to the engine completely. All right, there's my notch, and you can see the bolt has plenty of room and should be enough room for a wrench in there. So we'll slide the bolt in here because we won't be able to get it in once the tran's on. And then I notched the plate, so that'll fit just like that. You know, sometimes things make sense in your head, and then when you go to put stuff together, you're like, oh yeah, well, that's one of those times. Obviously the notch on the plate needed to match the notch on the transmission for that bolt head. Yeah, that's way better. All right, there we go. That should work. So nothing left to do but to slide this thing on. All right, now for my adapter piece to bridge these two holes, slides on there like that. And I just need to find a nut for that. I think we're good. That worked out really well. Definitely clamped these two together nice and tight. Don't see any reason why that shouldn't work. Eventually I do plan on making brackets from these bottom holes to the block, just for some extra support. But realistically, I think these top four should be plenty. All right, there we go. Eventually, I'd like to find a longer bolt for this. I didn't really get a lot of thread engagement on this one, and maybe a properly sized bolt for that. But for mock-up purposes, that looks good. Now, the next thing we need to do is go ahead and lift this thing up, and I'm gonna pull that pan off because I got a rear-wheel drive 2.4 pan with a pickup, which you cannot buy the pickup new anymore. You can buy replacement pans like from Rock Auto or something, but as far as pickup, you got to find an OEM one if you want to run the rear-wheel drive pan. I found this set used on eBay. Mopar discontinued the pickup, so it's the only choice if you want to run this pan. Maybe you could extend the front-wheel drive pickup if you wanted to do that, but I figured it'd just be easier to do this. So I want to lift this thing up. I want to swap the pan, and we can finally swing it in there. Check this out. So I decided to see if there's actually any oil in this thing. And this drain plug is just crunchy in there. I think it was probably drained. Oh yeah. It's pulling the threads out of the pan. But we're not using this anyway, so oh well. Oh my God, look at that. Oh wait, that's a spring. The fuck? Now I've seen some things. I think that's somebody stripped out the plug and used a helicoil kit or something and tried to put new threads in there. Obviously that did not work. Crazy. Oh, made a mess. Oops. Well, now that I got my mess pretty much cleaned up, let's take a look inside here. Nothing crazy. Looks pretty clean. All right, let's throw the rear-wheel drive pan on there just temporarily so we can swing this in there. All right, a couple issues before the pan can go on. I did have to pull the pickup from the front-wheel drive pan, but that's not a big deal. But you can see my plate here. I have it marked. The pan flange hits the plate back there. So I want to take the trans back off, notch this plate on both sides. That way the pan can sit up there. I know it kind of seems like a lot of work just to get those plates to fit in there between the trans and engine, but you know, it's the little things that make a difference, the little details. I want them in there if I can have them. So I think for now, I'm just going to try to snake it out of there just to get that rear-wheel drive pan on so I can get it in here and get motor mounts made. The rear-wheel drive pan is on. I'm gonna pull that shifter off real quick, and that way it clears the tunnel, and then we'll set it in there and get the trans bolted to the cross member under there, and hopefully we have enough clearance between the pan and the cross member here. I'd like to sit some kind of, maybe a piece of wood or something in there. That way the engine can just sit in here, and that'll give us our clearance. Then we can build mounts from the factory pockets to the engine. That way I don't have to worry about trying to have the engine hanging in there and then building mounts off of that. I'd like to just set it in there and have it sitting. Then I can just build mounts as the engine sits in there. All right, I think I got this thing sitting exactly where I want it. But we do have some hurdles to overcome. Now, I have it right where I want it, and basically that was determined by the trans mount. Now you can see I got the trans mount back in its home, so that means that we can use the factory drive shaft over there, which was my main goal because I didn't want to have to order a custom drive shaft. I wanted to be able to use the stock one. But it does need new U-joints, which is no big deal, but at least we know the factory size drive shaft can go in there. We don't have to order a custom one or anything like that. But to get there, the firewall did need some massaging. You can kind of see back there the cam sensor is touching the firewall, and that's after I already beat it in. So it's definitely going to need some more work. It's not pushing on the firewall, it's just touching. Before this thing goes back in, that firewall definitely needs pushed in a little bit more. I just want to check behind the dash to make sure there's nothing that I'm going to crack or break. I'm not sure what's right behind there, but I think a little bit more work will get a little bit of a gap, and that's all we'll need. Now the second issue is I did try to fit the 428 intake manifold, but with this big booster, it just does not fit. So I think my plan is to actually switch to manual brakes. I kind of like the idea of getting rid of all this and just going to the master cylinder on the firewall, clean up these brake lines and just do a proportioning valve so we can bias the brakes and not have this whole mess of junk sitting here. I read a lot of the Dakota guys just use the factory master cylinder, and then what you want to do is change the pivot point on the brake pedal so you get more leverage. So I think that's the route to go as far as that goes. And that'll clean up the whole firewall, give us plenty of room for the intake manifold. And then there's one other thing. You can see I have the 2.4 turbo AC bracket on the engine. And if you look right down here, we have an issue. The compressor will not fit with this rack in this place. It hits right there and right there. Plus the fittings bolt to the bottom of the compressor and come out. So there's no way any of that is going to fit. And I really want to keep AC. I want to make this thing family friendly. So having AC on hot summer days will be nice. That means we can all drive it. And if we can't take it out on the weekends because it's too hot, then what's the point? So I want to have AC. But that means we might have to go to manual steering also. I've been doing a lot of research on manual steering racks. Now, some of these trucks did come with a manual rack, but finding a manual rack to put in here is impossible. So I'm thinking Mustang 2 manual rack. We can go in here. The only problem I see is this hump. Might have to cut that out and do a plate in there and fill that hole so that it's flat across here. And then we can just make a bracket or something to adapt the Mustang 2 rack to the factory cross member here. The Mustang racks have this 16-inch wide bolt pattern compared to this 10-inch, so it'll bolt up out here and over here. I think we can make it work. Still doing some digging, but it's either that or no AC. So I think it's possible, but we're not going to keep that from making progress on getting the engine mounted in here, so we'll have to deal with the AC problem later. At least I know this is where the engine's sitting. And if you watched the last video, you know I mentioned this measurement here. I measured right here at the top of the cowl down to this bell housing bolt. And this is the measurement I got. And we're super close to that. I think we're like 1/4 inch to 3/8 off, but I don't see that as being a big deal. And what that measurement is for is the factory driveline angle. I knew if I got the bell housing measurement close to what I had when the 2.5 was in here, and I had the trans in its mount, that the angle would be the same. So we're super close. I think it's close enough. I'm going to lower the rear anyway, so there may be some pinion angle changes we have to do with shims or something like that. We'll see. But I'm going to call it good right here. The engine is level. It is square in the engine bay. Now these do offset to the passenger side a little bit. All these trucks do, all the engines. So it's not centered, but it's not supposed to be. Now I did throw this factory Dakota mounts in here just to be curious. And you know, I could probably make those work. Obviously be cut up in a plate or something to make them work. Same thing over here. It's close. But I figured if I'm going to cut up the mounts, I might as well just make new ones. So I got some energy suspension bushings coming and some tube steel. And that'll make a little mount to go in this pocket. And then we'll probably do a plate on the block and then connect the two with steel of some kind. My only clearance issue over here is I have to use one of these ports for the oil pressure sensor since it's in the way of the starter. So I really like to use these 4 bolt holes to make a plate. We just have to make sure we have clearance for these 2 oil lines. And then same thing over here. We have threads here, there. So maybe some kind of plate that bolts to all those. I'm not sure yet. And then link that to the mount. So I'm going to think on that a little bit and try to decide the best mounting holes to use for the plates. Probably get some cardboard, make some templates, and then transfer that to a thick plate of steel. And then we'll have plates to bolt to the engine, and it'll just be a matter of linking it to the mounts. Okay, I think I got some plates made that I kind of like. It's a shame I don't have 4 bolts in a square pattern over here on the driver's side, so we'll have a bolt back there, those 2, and this one. Not a lot of meat for the plate, but I think there's enough to mount to the motor mount. We'll have to add a sleeve back here where it meets the block just to keep the plate flat, but that's no big deal. For the passenger side, we have a much better arrangement. Nice square 4 bolts. Again, the same thing. We'll have to put some sleeves on the back to keep this plate flat. But I think that'll work. So now I need to transfer these to some steel and cut them out and start drilling holes through them. Add the sleeves on the back. I got bolts coming so we can have the proper size bolts. And then it's just a matter of making the bushing part here and linking the 2 together. Now I've taken some time to really think about my plan here. I know I mentioned manual steering and I mentioned manual brakes, but I would really like to autocross one day. I've never done it. It's something I've always wanted to do. And this could be the vehicle that I do it in. And having a manual rack's probably not the best idea for small, tight turns in a parking lot or wherever. So I think I have a plan for the rack. Now I ordered some offset bushings for the rack that will actually lower it 1/2 inch. I still don't think it's enough. So I think I'm just gonna lower the whole rack. And what we'll do is flatten this out here, get rid of this hump, and we'll have to do some welding and stuff to make it mount lower. It is on an angle, so we'll try to mimic that. We'll have to extend the steering shaft, but that'll give us some room. We can actually lower this rack down, and then I can even lower the engine down a little bit also because, like I said, my measurement, I feel like I'm still 3/8 too high. I'd like to get it perfect to where it was when the 2.5 was in here. That way we maintain that proper driveline angle from factory. Again, we'll lower the back. Might have to change the pinion angle in the back, but that's the plan. Sometimes with projects like these, you just gotta bite the bullet, cut stuff up, and make it work. And as far as the booster goes, I ordered a late 80s, early 90s Dodge Dakota booster. It should be 2.5 inches smaller in diameter. That way we can keep power brakes. I ordered a new master. We're gonna still clean up all these brake lines. We don't need the rear ABS unit because we're not gonna have any ABS, but that should tidy up the brake booster package over here. Now from what I read, it should bolt on. The Dakota master cylinder should bolt to the booster, but we'll just have to extend the rod that goes to the pedal. And of course, we're still going to have to clearance the firewall. There's just no getting around that. So we'll do that also. So I'm gonna yank this out of here. We're gonna clearance the firewall. We're gonna drop the rack, put the motor back in, get it sitting exactly where I want. Okay, the engine is pulled back out because I want to get the placement of the engine right before I continue on the mounts. So the biggest hurdle was the steering rack and I want to lower it. So got it pulled off. I think my plan to cut this chunk off the frame. And then I got this big piece of 1/4 inch thick steel and we'll bolt that to the frame and then bolt the rack to this just lower. I don't see any reason that wouldn't work. It's nice and thick. There's no way this is bending. Factory bolts just go right through the frame here and it's probably thinner than this piece of plate. So and I might just order a new rack instead of trying to clean that thing because it is nasty. I'm gonna cut that off real quick. We'll have to make a new steering shaft. You can buy those joints and then the double D rod that goes between them. So that shouldn't be a big deal. We'll custom make one of those. It looks like it needs replaced anyway and you can't buy a new. So since we're extending it, I'm just gonna make a new one. I'm gonna cut this off and test fit my steel and see how it looks. Well, that was a ton of work, but I'm glad it's done. Now I've got good news and bad news. Good news is, with the rack lowered, I was able to get the engine down lower. And my measurement from the bell housing bolt there to the top of the cowl is perfect. So what that did was, if you imagine, it lowered the front end down, which pulled the back of the head away from the firewall. So you can see we got plenty of room back there now. There's a nice gap between the cam sensor and the firewall now. So we're good there. But as far as the bad news, even with the rack lowered, once I had the SRT4 AC bracket on and the AC compressor, there was still no room for the steering shaft to come through. It still was all the way out here, and it just didn't have any room. Now, if you didn't watch the last video, this engine is from a 2003 Stratus, and it actually had all the accessory brackets on it. And the Stratus uses a stubby AC compressor, so it literally stops right here at these back mounting bolts and it goes forward, which you can see gives us plenty of room on the back side for the steering shaft to come through. And then since the rack will be dropped, you can see it will clear our lines. So I think that'll work. My only concern is how far the rack's going to have to be spaced away from the frame and tie rod angle. Right now, they kind of curve to the back. You can kind of see that, which I'm not a big fan of. I'm not really worried about the arm this way. We can always do a bump steer kit to adjust the arm angle up and down, but forward and back, there's not much we can do. So the goal will be to get this rack as far back as possible. Not really concerned about height, except for, obviously we don't want it too low and it hit the ground for some odd reason. But I think we're in good shape here where we can finally make the mounts. Now, I'm not sure what my goal was to run all the SRT4 accessories. Maybe it's because I wanted the engine to look as much like an SRT4 engine as possible, but at this point, I no longer care. I just want it to fit right. So we're gonna run all the Stratus accessories now. If any of you guys need SRT4 accessories, like the alternator, AC compressor, pump, brackets, bolts, all that stuff's gonna be on my eBay. Link down in the description. So if you need any of that stuff, go check that out. Really, the only SRT4 part I care about is the valve cover, because I want it to say turbo. But let's get these mounts done, because this video is getting long enough and I want to get it wrapped up. Now for the frame pocket side, this is what I came up with. This is just a set of energy suspension bushings. I think they're for leaf spring shackles, but I just went on their site and picked a size that I liked and then found some tubing that fit, and they'll just sit in a pocket like this, and then we'll just build off of that to the plates. So now it's time to make some plates for the block. Man, guys, what a pain that was, but the mounts are finally done. Couldn't be more pumped to finally have this thing sitting in here on its own. No shims or nothing. Fully mounted in the truck, exactly where it's gonna sit when it's all done. Right here we have the driver's one, and my little spacers worked out great on both of them. See over here, same thing. Got 3 spacers in there, keep it nice and flat. And then looking underneath, we got plenty of clearance. No way that's touching. But yeah, just look at it. Man, I just can't believe it's mounted in there. Now this has been one of the hardest parts of this whole thing, is fabricating mounts. I'll be honest, I've never done anything like this. I'm not a fabricator. I'm not a welder. I don't have any special tools. Just this cheap flux core welder, some power tools, Harbor Freight discs and stuff. Don't mind the mess. But just working with what I got, making shit happen. But I think the biggest hurdle is finally over, getting this thing mounted in here. From here on, it shouldn't be really any fabrication kind of things other than that steering rack. So I think in the next video, we'll focus on getting the steering rack relocated and mounted permanently. Still waiting on our AC compressor to come in before I can do that. And then we can yank the engine and trans back out, clean the firewall off, paint it, rip the suspension off, paint the frame, get all this cleaned up. in the next video, and then probably test fit my new smaller booster. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. A lot of progress made. And if you guys have any questions about where we're at so far with this project, just drop a comment and I'll try to answer them. And if there's any of you guys with Dakotas who know where I can find the factory sway bar brackets that mount to the frame so I can run a front sway bar, let me know. This project's not just stuffing an SRT4 engine in the truck. We're redoing everything. And we're not only going to make it have some power, but also handle. But thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate the views and all the feedback I've gotten so far on this. It seems very positive. And if you're new here, don't forget to do the YouTube stuff so you don't miss future videos. Share it with your buddies if you think they might enjoy this. I'll see you guys on the next one.